guys, welcome to this edition of Scott's podcast series. I am joined by the founder of Eventellect, Patrick Ryan. Patrick, welcome. How are you today?
Thanks, Scott, for having me on. I would like to say co-founder because it was my business partner, Ignacio, and I was about almost 14 years ago to the month that we kind of did our first ticketing deal together.
That is just unbelievable. And this is going to be a 2-segment interview because Patrick has such a card following space over the last 18 months. So we're going to talk cards today and we're going to talk ticketing on Wednesday. So want to get your grasp on it. Like the sports memorabilia, the sports card space has exploded over the last 18 months. Why is that? How did that come about?
Well, so I think there's a couple factors at play. I think the first part of it is that there are many collectors like myself who were collectors back when we were kids. And we all kind of know that nostalgia is a very powerful drug. So it felt like it was sort of a matter of time before collectors kind of return to their childhood roots, particularly if they have kids or godkids or other young people that might be interested. And so I felt like there's kind of a natural kind of generational cycle that there'd be momentum back into cards. A lot of us who've been in the space for a little while, like when we saw the National Sports Convention, obviously got a lot of news. The Collectors Convention got a lot of news in Chicago because it was setting attendance records, but we saw steady growth in 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19. So, we'd kind of seen the market move up. And then I think that really it was COVID and the lockdown was like the match that kind of set it all ablaze in a much bigger and faster way than any of us expected. And I think just the popularity and attraction to collecting modern players and seeing their performance impact their prices was a bit of like fueling the gambling niche. It sort of was also fueling the investment niche. And so I think there was just a lot of positive momentum that then just hit the accelerator right on the start of the pandemic.
That is fantastic. And that goes to my last question. And obviously following The Last Dance, being a massive fan of Michael Jordan, tell me about like those Michael Jordan card flips you had, last summer. Obviously I know one set a record at the time, and like, that was just like crazy what happened with the Jordan cards exploding during the Last Dance documentary last spring, last summer.
Yeah, sure thing. I think one thing to keep in mind is that we see with many cards, and we've seen this over the last, 7-8 years, that oftentimes a particular card will take 2 steps forward in price and then take a step back. And so there's a lot of historical data that like if a card got to a certain price, it would get back to that price in a function of time. So, we saw a nice run up on the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10. And one thing to kind of make clear is that, there's a lot of 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan cards in existence, but there's less than 350 of them that have been graded a perfect 10 by PSA. So wow. That's why the card has some scarcity to it and has like, you can buy a PSA 4 for, probably $4,000 or $5,000. But now a PSA 10 is in the range of $300,000 and $350,000 and has a lot to do with that scarcity. So what happened during the Last Dance is even though there was a lot of mania and excitement around nostalgia of the Bulls and Michael Jordan, a lot of people felt that was like a peak time to sell. Well, actually, there was a lot more supply hitting the market than there was demand for cards in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. And since I'd seen that card hit peaks before, I felt that I could buy a couple copies below prices they were at 3 months ago. And it was just a matter of sitting on them. Now, of course, hindsight being 2020, I should have sat on them quite a bit longer. But, I rarely like having more than one copy of a card because I'm a collector at heart. Now, when I have multiple copies of something, it's because I'm viewing it as a flip to finance something else that I'd like to buy. And there was a very rare LeBron James card that I wanted to win. So I needed to sell those Jordans to finance it. So it's a bit of a wash in terms of like that LeBron has gone up almost as much as those 2 cards. But I like having just one card and not having, now, of course, I've got multiples of lower end cards. But in terms of high end cards, I'm a real collector, so I really only like to have one of each.
No, I mean, that sounds great. And what do you think? I mean, with sports cards, I mean, you think they'll continue to surge or will they fall? Like, I mean, what's the future? And the second question is, what are your thoughts on the NFT game right now?
Well, so in the card market, it feels like it's getting to a healthier place because we are seeing some players, some cards, some eras go up, and we're also seeing some go down. And I think that that's a sign of health versus where, 6 months ago, it felt like just everything was going up and that just wasn't sustainable. So by seeing stuff go up and down, I think we end up in that kind of position where we're back to some cards will take 2 steps forward, they might take a step back, but over time there will be some steady nice appreciation with, of course, some unusual volatility based on any number of factors.
Right.
So I feel like it's in a healthier spot long term. The NFT market actually feels kind of similar in the way that, like, the only one I'm really familiar with is the NBA Top Shot NFTs. And I sometimes, like, I own a couple comic books, I own a couple sealed video games. Those are not things that I actively collect, but I like watching those markets because it can point out trends in other markets. And the best way for me to follow something is to have a little bit of skin in the game.
Mhm.
So I guess probably 3 months ago, I bought $1,000 worth of Top Shot, NBA Top Shot. Now, what's interesting is that those 5 Top Shots that I bought, if I would have bought them at their peak value, it would have been worth they would have been worth over $80,000 combined.
Wow.
That's a pretty steep depreciation. Well, what's funny is about 3 weeks later, my account value went from 1,000 to 500, but there's been a run up, and now my account value is at about 1,700. And so it feels like it's getting to this place of more sustainability because there's plenty of options in the $200 range, not the $2,000 range. I think
Right.
that's where things got really nutty. So I think that it's kind of a matter of understanding where some of these might be getting kind of pumped up artificially by influencers. There might not be enough inherent demand, but if they come down enough in price, people are like, well, this is fun to own at that
Mhm.
price. And a bit of advice I like to give anybody in terms of alternative investing is if you own something, whether it be like a piece of art that you inherited or an old piece of furniture, keep in mind a lot of people own things laying around their house that they might not realize have some unique value. What I like to say is, okay, that painting on the wall that you bought for $5,000 at an antique store 20 years ago, well, it's currently worth 50,000. Would you pay $50,000 today for it? And if the answer is no, then you really need to consider selling. If you're not a buyer at the current market, then you probably need to be a seller. And that's just some general advice I give to anybody who is investing in NFTs or sports cards or other alternative investments.
That's some fabulous advice. And really, last question before we end this segment is, I mean, obviously last week we got blown away with Major League Baseball choosing Fanatics, ending that 70-year relationship with Tops. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Fanatics is a very savvy company. It's run by people who are very good at building businesses, but also building relationships. And so I think that really speaks to the fact that Michael Rubin and his team made a great job of, they took the opportunity to win the apparel business and they've expanded it in baseball, right? They now manufacture the jerseys and they're involved in much more of the baseball ecosystem. So when they wanted to get into trading cards, they had the relationship, already there. So it really highlights just the kind of core business lesson of, build good relationships and deliver what you say you're going to deliver, and that'll continue to give you more opportunity. Now, from a collector standpoint, I have, like a lot of people, a lot of nostalgic feelings around some of the card designs that Topps has made, and even Panini and Prism, even though it's a bit newer, but especially Upper Deck. And now that Upper Deck and Panini and Topps all sort of lack, outside of Upper Deck has the NHL license, they all lack the core product, right? They're lacking those licensing agreements, but they still have very cool and collectible designs. It seems like there could be some synergy, whether it be via licensing or merger or acquisition, that I just hope that there's a way to keep some of those brands, maybe not all of them, but at least some of those brands continuing to get made. And quite frankly, if there's not a path for that, I could see some collectors be like, you know what, this is enough, right? Like people that got into collecting, let's just say 2005. I've been collecting, off and on since 1985. But in 2005, if you bought basketball cards, there were lots of sets you could choose from. Then come, 2010, it's only Panini, right? And now it's really not that much longer down the road to 2026, and then it's only Fanatics. People like to have that continuity within their collection. So I'm optimistic that Fanatics will figure out a way to get these brands under license, one form or another. Because if they don't, I think it will be detrimental to their long-term strategy in trading cards.
Fabulous input there. That definitely kept a big eye in that news last week. But thank you, Patrick, for this is end segment 1. Join us on Wednesday for segment 2. We're going to talk ticketing. I'll let Patrick say my tagline if he remembers it.
Keep it lean and clean.
You got it. We'll see you guys on Wednesday for part 2 of Ticketing with Patrick Ryan.